Family Affair, the classic American television series of the late 1960s, captivated millions of viewers with its heartwarming portrayal of a family unexpectedly connected by love. But behind the innocent smiles of the children and the calm demeanor of Uncle Bill were real lives marked by solitude, loss, and tragedy, where television glamour was merely a curtain covering human pain. Anissa Jones as Buffy Davis, the tiny angel who died young. Anissa Jones, the little girl with big round eyes and golden hair, was once the symbol of innocence in Family Affair. Born on March 11, 1958 in West Lafayette, Indiana, Anissa began acting at just 8 years old. When she embodied the orphaned girl Buffy adopted by her Uncle Bill, she brought all of America to tears with her pure smile and naive heart. Buffy was not just a character. She was the image of comfort, of family love that everyone longed for during the turbulent years of 1960s America. Success came to Anissa faster than anyone anticipated. She became a familiar face on television, appearing in commercials, talk shows, and receiving thousands of letters from fans. But along with that spotlight, the life of the small girl began to crack. Anissa's parents divorced, fighting over custody and her earnings from the show. At school, she was shunned by her peers for being famous too soon. And on set, she had to learn to smile while inside, she only wanted to cry. She once told a close friend, "Everyone loves Buffy, but no one knows Anissa." When Family Affair ended in 1971, Anissa was only 13 years old, but her career virtually ceased. Hollywood was no longer interested in a child star who had grown up. She tried to find odd jobs, but no one wanted to hire a Buffy whose magic had run out. Without parental guidance, Anissa's life spiraled out of control, frequently socializing with older friends and delving into parties and drugs. She yearned for freedom, but that freedom turned into a dead-end trap. On August 28, 1976, Anissa was found dead at a party in Oceanside, California. She passed away from a drug overdose at just 18 years old. In her purse, police found a few coins and an old photo taken on the set of Family Affair. Anissa's death stunned all of Hollywood. Millions who had loved Buffy could not believe their little angel had such a tragic end. Her ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean, fulfilling her wish to be as free as the waves. Anissa's net worth at the time of her death was only about $80,000 USD, mostly remaining residuals from her acting days. That figure is truly small compared to the immense fame she once created. But what makes people sorrowful more than the money is the void she left behind. A child who once brought joy to the entire world ultimately failed to find happiness for herself. Anissa Jones is forever the symbol of Hollywood childhood, where the smiles on screen are often just a thin veil hiding a brutal reality. Her death is a reminder of the price paid when fame comes too soon, and of a small angel who before reaching adulthood turned into a sad legend in the hearts of the audience. Sebastian Cabot, as Mr. Giles French, the solitary exemplary butler. Sebastian Cabot, the name associated with the image of the calm, intelligent, and affectionate butler in Family Affair. Born on July 6, 1918 in London, England, he did not have formal acting training. Cabot worked as a chef and a mechanic before serendipitously finding his way into acting. When he took on the role of Mr. Giles French at the age of 48, he brought the audience a character who was both stern and warm, like the father figure any child would wish for. It was this subtle charm that made him an irreplaceable icon in the hearts of 60s audiences. Behind that elegance, Cabot was a man of few words and lived a secluded life. He once admitted that he felt out of place in opulent Hollywood, where everything was driven by connections and fame rather than genuine affection. Although Family Affair elevated his name to new heights, fame also brought him heavy pressures. Cabot was often compared to other contemporary English actors, and he always felt he was not perfect enough to stand alongside those formally trained in Royal Theatre. This sense of inadequacy led him to seek solace in alcohol and solitude after filming. After the show ended, he continued to play several supporting roles and voiced famous Disney animated films like The Jungle Book and Winnie the Pooh. However, Cabot's final years were a series of struggles with illness. A first stroke forced him to temporarily halt work, and his health steadily declined. Friends recounted that he always maintained a calm exterior, but inside was sadness because no one seemed to remember Mr. French anymore. On August 22, 1977, Sebastian Cabot took his last breath in North Hollywood, aged 59. His ashes were interred at Westwood Village Memorial Park, where many other Hollywood legends also rest. When the news of his passing was announced, thousands of fans sent condolences saying they had lost the butler in their hearts. Cabot's net worth at the time was estimated at about 1.5 million USD, a small sum compared to the effort and legacy he left behind. But his true value was not in money. It was the image of the man who always maintained his dignity, loved his profession, and lived fully even in solitude. Beyond the spotlight, Sebastian Cabot was not just Mr. French of Family Affair, but also an icon for a generation of dedicated, honest actors who left the audience a gentle smile mixed with a touch of melancholy, just like his own quiet life. Brian Keith as Bill Davis, the kind uncle and the sad end. Brian Keith, the rugged but warm face of Uncle Bill in Family Affair, was once the symbol of a strong, affectionate man in the modern world. Born on November 14, 1921 in Bayonne, New Jersey, into a famous artistic family, Keith grew up immersed in the atmosphere of the stage and film set. He served in the United States Marine Corps during World War II, experiencing bombing and death, experiences that made him mature early and more reserved than his contemporaries. When he accepted the role of Bill Davis in 1966, Brian Keith was 45 years old. He brought to the character a mature, seasoned, and deeply loving manhood. Uncle Bill was a successful engineer living alone in New York, who suddenly had to care for his brother's 3 orphaned children. The image of the emotionally reserved man slowly melting away due to family love moved millions of viewers. This role not only made Keith's name, but also placed him on the list of America's most beloved television actors at the time. Yet after every scene, Brian Keith returned to his own solitude. Though he had a strong on-screen appearance, close friends knew he possessed a vulnerable soul. He once said, "I play the happy person because I know what loneliness feels like." During his peak years of fame, he still felt disconnected from the world. A man who had seen too much loss, now having to force a smile on the small screen. After Family Affair, Keith continued to star in numerous films and television shows, but no role ever surpassed the massive shadow of Bill Davis. In his private life, he married 3 times and had 6 children. Behind the happy images in the press, his marriage was turbulent. Separated from his wife, distant from his children, and spending long evenings in his Malibu beach house, Keith was left with only his cigar, a glass of liquor, and emptiness. Old age brought him 2 great tragedies. The first was severe lung disease, a consequence of decades of smoking. The second was the suicide of his daughter Daisy Keith, also a young actress at the age of 27. That shock extinguished all remaining will to live in him. Relatives recounted that from the day Daisy passed, Keith never smiled again. On June 24, 1997, just months after his daughter's death, Brian Keith shot himself in the head at his Malibu home. He was 75 years old. In his short suicide note, he wrote only, "I am going to be at peace." When the news broke, millions of fans wept, because the warm uncle of Family Affair was gone forever. His net worth was estimated at about 20 million USD, but the price of that life was an inconsolable sadness. Brian Keith lived, loved, and smiled for millions, but ultimately he failed to find joy for himself. Uncle Bill remains the image of benevolence and responsibility, but behind the spotlight, he was a man with a wounded heart who chose to depart quietly to find the peace life had denied him. Del Moore as Bill Davis's friend. The smile that dissolved with illness. Del Moore, the man with the friendly smile and warm demeanor, was one of the familiar faces appearing alongside Brian Keith in Family Affair. He was born on May 14, 1916, in Pensacola, Florida. Before becoming an actor, Moore worked as a radio announcer and served in the U.S. Air Force during World War II. When he took on the role of Bill Davis's close friend in 1966, he was approaching 50. An age not typically prime for conquering Hollywood, but he made audiences remember him with his natural charm and gentle laughter. In the show, Delmore's character brought humor and relatability. The good friend who always appeared at the right time to share and encourage Uncle Bill through difficult situations. Although a supporting role, he helped the audience feel that the everyday story of family affair was more authentic, more real. On set, Moore was always the soul of laughter, the jokester who helped lighten the mood after emotional scenes. Everyone loved him for his kindness, simplicity, and the way he cared for those around him. Yet behind that cheerfulness was a silent battle. Delmore was a perfectionist and constantly feared being forgotten. As Hollywood increasingly favored younger faces, he, a middle-aged actor, struggled to find roles. His personal life was also not smooth. A broken marriage, declining health, and work pressure gradually led him into depression. Nevertheless, he never let the audience see his sadness. Even when his body was weary, he still arrived on set on time, offered his familiar smile, and said, "This job is my last joy." In the early 1970s, Delmore was increasingly afflicted by hepatitis. He tried to hide the illness, not wanting anyone's pity. Friends recounted that there were days he had a high fever, but still drove himself to the set just to appear in a small segment. For him, acting, even for a few minutes, was still happiness. But his body weakened quickly, and the disease didn't give him a long chance to fight. On August 30th, 1970, Delmore passed away in California, just 4 years after Family Affair premiered, aged 54. His death shocked the cast and crew. Many said Del left the way he lived, quietly and with great self-respect. His net worth was estimated at only about $500,000 USD, almost all his savings from years of tireless work in the television industry. Despite his short life, Delmore left a beautiful image in the hearts of the audience. The simple, kind artist who did not chase fame, but only wished to dedicate himself to his art. He is a testament to the bitter truth of Hollywood, where those who create laughter for the masses sometimes live and die in silence. Beyond the spotlight, Delmore was no longer the hilarious actor, but a serene soul leaving behind a smile as light as smoke, gradually fading with time. John Williams as Nigel French. The solitary, aristocratic artist, John Williams, the man with the impeccable English accent and aristocratic demeanor, was one of the faces that brought distinct sophistication to Family Affair. Born on April 15, 1903 in Buckinghamshire, England, he was formally trained on the London stage before coming to Hollywood. When he joined Family Affair in 1967, he was 64 years old, an age when most actors retire, but Williams tirelessly stood before the camera. In the show, he played Nigel French, the older brother of the butler Giles French, portrayed by Sebastian Cabot. His appearances were limited to a few episodes, but each time he entered the frame, audiences felt the unique English charm, refinement, and a touch of pride that no one else could deliver. Before Family Affair, John Williams was already a familiar face in classic cinema. He starred in Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder and received much praise for his subtle, masterful acting. But the more successful he became, the more solitary he felt. Williams never married and had no children. He lived alone in a small apartment in Los Angeles with only classical music and play scripts for company. When colleagues gathered after filming, he often quietly left no parties, no noise, just silently as if he did not belong to that bustling world. John Williams's career spanned 4 decades, but he always maintained a simple lifestyle. When he played Nigel French in his twilight years, he viewed it as a gentle farewell to the audience. The way he looked at his younger brother, Mr. French, with eyes that were both proud and weary, seemed to reflect his own real life, an artist who had dedicated his life, but few understood the solitude hidden behind that composure. After leaving Family Affair, Williams gradually withdrew from Hollywood. He returned to England, living reclusively in a small house in La Jolla, California, where he tended his garden and listened to Beethoven every morning. Friends recounted that he still received hundreds of letters from American fans, but rarely replied. He believed it was best to let them remember me in my final role. In his final years, John Williams suffered from heart disease. He did not pursue aggressive treatment, simply stating, "I have lived enough." On May 5, 1983, he passed away in California at the age of 80. The funeral was small, attended by only a few old friends. His ashes were interred in his homeland, England, where his artistic journey began. John Williams's net worth at the time of his death was estimated at about $2 million USD, a modest figure compared to his stature, but he did not care for fame or fortune. What he left behind was not wealth, but a legacy, a noble, meticulous, and deeply dignified acting style. John Williams is the embodiment of the classical generation of artists, disciplined, composed, and solitary until the very end. Beyond the spotlight, he was no longer a Hollywood gentleman, but just an ordinary man resting among the mournful notes of his own life. Heather Angel as Miss Faversham. The elegant lady and the silent sorrow. Heather Angel, a name that evokes the classical beauty of England, and in Family Affair, she was the embodiment of grace, gentleness, and aristocracy. Born on February 9, 1909 in Oxford, England, Heather was formally trained in theater from a very young age. She came to Hollywood in the early 1930s, bringing with her a sophisticated English accent and an intelligent beauty that captivated American audiences. When she accepted the role of Miss Faversham in Family Affair in 1967, she was 58 years old. At an age when many actresses were forgotten by Hollywood, Heather still made viewers pause to admire her composed demeanor and gentle eyes. In Family Affair, Miss Faversham was the mature, refined woman who was both a friend and a gentle counselor to the Davis family. The character was like a soft breath amidst a show full of youthful energy, and Heather Angel portrayed it perfectly. With her warm voice and dignified composure, she gave the audience a sense of peace, as if just having Miss Faversham in the frame made everything gentler. But behind that composure, Heather's real life held much loss and solitude that few knew about. Heather once had a brilliant film career. She appeared in many classic films such as The Hound of the Baskervilles, Rebecca, and Alfred Hitchcock's Suspicion. However, that glamour gradually faded as Hollywood's tastes began to change. After the war, studios sought younger faces, and Heather, the woman once likened to English tea rose, was gradually relegated to supporting roles. She maintained her aristocratic bearing, but the spotlight no longer shone as brightly as before. The greatest tragedy in her life came in 1958, when her husband, actor Henry Wilcoxon, was murdered during a robbery in Los Angeles. That sudden death completely devastated Heather. From then on, she lived reclusively, nearly withdrawing from society, only occasionally taking small roles to not forget the feeling of being immersed in art. Her close friend once recounted that Heather often sat for hours in her quiet room listening to classical music and talking to her husband's photograph. "I'm not afraid of dying," she once said. "I'm only afraid of having to live another life where no one calls my name with love." In her final years, Heather Angel lived in Santa Barbara, California, in a small house filled with roses and old photographs. She rarely appeared in public, but when people saw her, she still maintained her unchanging elegance. Her gray hair neatly coiffed, her voice soft as the wind. On December 13, 1986, she passed away from cancer, aged 77. The funeral was quiet, attended by only a few old friends and former colleagues. Her ashes were scattered over the Pacific Ocean, like the gentle farewell of a woman who was composed her entire life. Heather Angel's net worth at the time of her death was about $1 million USD, a modest figure compared to her peak, but she never cared for it. For her happiness was living with dignity, being remembered for her character rather than her fame. Beyond the spotlight, Heather Angel remained a true lady, elegant, gentle, and solitary. A rose that had bloomed in the wind, then concluded her life with an unfading fragrance. Nancy Walker as Emily Turner, the strong woman amidst a harsh Hollywood. Nancy Walker, the petite yet brilliant actress, director, and comedian, was one of the lively souls of American television in the 1960s, 1970s. Born on May 10, 1922, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, into a family with artistic tradition. Her father was Broadway dancer Dewey Bartow. Nancy entered the world of theater at the age of 16. When she played Emily Turner in Family Affair in 1968, she was 46 years old, in the prime of her career, seasoned and full of energy. On screen, Emily Turner was the sharp-witted yet warm-spirited housekeeper who provided moments of relief and humor amidst the emotional family stories. Nancy Walker was the kind of person who could not be forgotten. She was small in stature, just over 5 feet tall, but her stage energy was 10 times greater. In Family Affair, audiences loved her for her witty, sarcastic lines, mischievous smile, and expressive eyes. She transformed a seemingly ordinary role into a vivid character much like herself in real life, sharp, strong, and unafraid to show her personality. But behind that vivacity, Nancy Walker was a woman who fought tirelessly her whole life to be recognized in a male-dominated world. In the 1950s, 1960s, Hollywood was not easy for women who dared to speak and act boldly. Nancy was rejected for many roles simply for not being pretty enough, or not fitting the leading lady image. She often self-mocked, "I'm not the muse. I'm the one who makes the muse laugh." But instead of accepting the stereotype, Nancy created her own niche. She pivoted to directing, something extremely rare for women at the time, and made her mark with the television series The Mary Tyler Moore Show and Rhoda. Even so, to reach that position, she had to pay the price with her health time and much unseen solitude. Nancy's private life was also full of contradictions. Although beloved by her colleagues, she was a private person, rarely sharing details about her personal life. Married to David Craig, a playwright and stage director, she had a long-lasting marriage but no children. "Art is my child," she once said, "and it is also what consumes me." In her final years, even as her career still shone brightly, Nancy battled lung cancer, a consequence of years of smoking, a habit that once helped her reduce stress between continuous filming hours. On March 25, 1992, Nancy Walker passed away in Studio City, California, aged 69. When the news broke, friends and fans were stunned. The small woman who once made the whole world laugh was now gone quietly. Her ashes were interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Glendale, the resting place of many Hollywood legends. Nancy Walker's net worth at the time of her death was estimated at about $8 million USD, a testament to the relentless effort of a woman who made a name for herself through her own talent. But more than money, her true legacy is her spirit of consistency and courage. In Family Affair, Emily Turner was just a small role, but Nancy Walker made that character shine. And in real life, she is proof of a truth in Hollywood. Sometimes the strongest woman is not the one who is celebrated, but the one who dares to live genuinely, dares to laugh, and dares to walk in solitude while still remaining brilliant. Ida Lupino as Margaret Williams, the talented woman beset by tragedy. Ida Lupino, the talented actress, screenwriter, director, and producer, was one of the most powerful female pioneers in Hollywood. Born on February 4, 1918 in London, England, Ida came from a family of artists with a long theatrical tradition. When she played Margaret Williams in Family Affair in 1968, she was 50 years old, seasoned, intelligent, and weathered after many years of turmoil in the industry. On screen, Margaret Williams was a sharp but kind-hearted woman, representing maturity amidst the upheavals of family life. That role, though brief, perfectly reflected Ida Lupino's real-life demeanor, tough, independent, and concealing much pain. Since she was young, Ida Lupino had been a star. At 15, she signed a contract with Paramount Pictures and was quickly hailed as the most glamorous English actress in Hollywood. But Ida did not just want to be a beautiful flower on screen. In an era where women were viewed as dependents in the film industry, she dared to direct, a choice that stunned all of Hollywood. She became the first woman to direct American film noir with the work The Hitchhiker 1953 paving the way for the next generation of female directors. However, that very strong personality caused her to be viewed as difficult to work with and gradually isolated her within the male-dominated studio system. In Family Affair, Ida portrayed a gentle, composed Margaret Williams, but her eyes still shone with experience. It is said that when the camera stopped rolling, Ida often sat quietly for hours in a corner of the set, staring into the distance. Perhaps at that moment, she was living between two worlds. On one side was the gentle role, on the other was her real life, where the woman who dared to rebel had to pay the price with solitude. Ida's private life was filled with complex romances. She married 3 times, including director Collier Young, who later left her for her close friend actress Joan Fontaine. That betrayal plunged Ida into a crisis. She once said, "I can direct the whole crew, but I can't direct my own heart." That was a wound that never healed, and perhaps the reason she became increasingly withdrawn. In the 1970s, Ida Lupino suffered from multiple health problems. After the death of her 3rd husband, she lived almost reclusively in a small Los Angeles home, only occasionally appearing in old television reruns. Despite being forgotten, she maintained her pride in what she had done for women in cinema. "I wanted to prove that women are not just pretty faces," she once said, "but intelligence and strength." On August 3, 1995, Ida Lupino passed away from a stroke, aged 77. Her ashes were interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, in the same cemetery as many Hollywood legends. Her net worth at the time was estimated at about $5 million USD. Not substantial compared to her contributions, but Ida Lupino's true value lies in the legacy she left behind. The courage to break gender boundaries, dare to live differently, and be true to herself. Beyond the spotlight, Ida Lupino is a symbol of the unconquered woman. She was a star. She was rejected, she was lonely, but she still held her head high. In Family Affair, audiences saw a composed Margaret. In real life, the world saw a warrior. And when she passed away, Hollywood bowed in farewell, not just to an artist, but to a legend who lives on through time. Sarah Selby, as Miss Cummings, the dedicated woman who was forgotten. Sarah Selby, the gentle face, soft voice, and kind eyes, was one of the familiar supporting actresses on American screens in the 1950s-1970s. Born on August 30, 1905 in Los Angeles, California, she entered the arts at a very young age, starting on the local theater stage and gradually gaining notice for her charm and natural acting style. When she took on the role of Miss Cummings in Family Affair in 1968, Sarah was 63 years old, an age when most female Hollywood actors had been forgotten. But she, with her calm demeanor and eyes full of empathy, made audiences remember her character as an icon of kindness. Miss Cummings was the image of the dedicated woman always silently caring for others, like a mother in the background of the Davis family's life. Although the role was small, Sarah Selby brought a rare depth to it, from the way she tilted her head when listening to the gentle smile when comforting the children. In a show full of laughter, the character made viewers feel reassured as she represented compassion and unrequited sacrifice. However, Sarah Selby's real life was a story of silence and being forgotten. Throughout her over 40 years in the arts, she was never a bright star. Most audiences only recognized her face but couldn't recall her name. Despite appearing in over 60 films and television shows, from Gunsmoke Perry Mason to The Twilight Zone, Sarah never had a leading role. She once said in a rare interview, "It's fine, I just need to work. If people still need me, it means I am still alive." Sarah Selby lived alone her entire life. She never married, had no children, and left little wealth. Her life was so simple that when she wasn't filming, she worked at a local library in Los Angeles, partly to earn extra income and partly because she loved the smell of old paper and the quiet. Many colleagues recounted that Sarah always had a gentle smile, but behind that smile was solitude. She lost her mother very early, and perhaps from then on she chose to dedicate her affection to her characters, gentle, patient, and easily overlooked women. Towards the end of her life, Sarah suffered from heart disease. Despite her frail health, she still took a few small roles just to feel like she hadn't been left behind. The last time she appeared on television was in 1974, in a rerun of a Family Affair episode. That was the last moment she was seen as Miss Cummings, like a gentle farewell to the audience. Sarah Selby passed away on January 7, 1980 in Los Angeles at the age of 74. Her funeral was simple, with only a few old friends from the industry attending. Her ashes were interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. the resting place of many actors who shared the spotlight, but were also eventually forgotten. Her net worth was estimated at only about $100,000, mostly savings from her years of acting. Sarah Selby was not a big star, but she was the soul of countless small roles, the kind mothers, aunts, and neighbors that audiences always felt familiar with. Beyond the glamour of Hollywood, where fame comes and goes as fast as the wind, Sarah preserved the most precious thing: sincerity. And perhaps that is why, even though she passed away over half a century ago, the name Sarah Selby still makes those who love Family Affair smile gently when they remember her, as if remembering a long-lost relative who brought quiet peace amidst the busy world of the lights. Erin Moran as the child star, the lost star in her own dream. Erin Moran, the little girl with big eyes, tousled brown hair, and a radiant smile, stepped into the world of Family Affair at just 8 years old. Born on October 18, 1960 in Burbank, California, Erin grew up only a few blocks away from the major studios. When she was chosen to appear in this popular television series in 1968, she was still young enough to believe that everything on set was magic. In the show, she brought the image of a smart, lively, energetic child, a piece that made the audience laugh in the most mundane moments. But Hollywood is no place for vulnerable souls. As she grew older, Erin became the golden child of television. She gained nationwide fame as Joni Cunningham in Happy Days when she was only 14. The press called her America's Princess, and audiences viewed her as a member of their own family. Then, as fate had seemingly written for many child stars, the spotlight faded with cruel speed. When the series ended, Erin was just in her early 20s, an age too young to have already passed her peak. She struggled with failed auditions, unsigned contracts, and the haunting belief that audiences only wanted to see little Joni, not the grown woman. "I don't know who I am," she once confessed. "Hollywood taught me how to act, but not how to live when the role was over." In the 1980s, Erin began sinking into solitude. She married actor Rocky Ferguson, a conservative and demanding man, which made her life increasingly stifled. When the marriage failed, she lost almost everything: fame, finances, and faith. The tabloids showed no mercy, writing about her as the epitome of the failed child star, while Erin barely had the strength left to avoid the very lights that had once elevated her. In her final years, Erin Moran lived precariously in a mobile home with her second husband, Steve Fleischman. She still had a smile, but the light had gone out of her eyes. Friends recounted that she liked to go out to the yard every morning, watching the sunlight stream through the silver curtains, a light that reminded her of the bustling set days she once belonged to. In 2017, she passed away at the age of 56, the cause determined to be end-stage throat cancer. When the police arrived at her home, a notebook was still on the table where she had written unfinished, "I still dream of the days when I got to play someone other than myself." Erin Moran left quietly without flashbulbs, interviews, or red carpets. Her assets were only about $50,000, but those who loved Family Affair or Happy Days knew she needed no more than that to become a part of America's memory. The spotlight once shone brightly around her, then flickered out, leaving the heartbreaking void of a star who could not find a way out of her own role. Erin Moran, the child who once made the world smile, ultimately vanished like a dream, beautiful, fragile, and profoundly sad. When Family Affair concluded, people still remembered the children's laughter, the warm family moments, and the image of the kind Uncle Bill in his New York apartment. But behind every frame, each actor carried a private story, not of the character, but of themselves, people who smiled for the world, then silently endured unknown sorrows. Hollywood gave them glamour, but it also took their peace. Nevertheless, they chose to dedicate themselves so that every frame still retains the warmth of a real human being, loving, solitary, and brave. Yet perhaps that is why Family Affair lives on. The show is not just a fictional story about affection, but a testament to a time when real people gave their entire souls to tell that dream. Audiences today, when rewatching, see not just a family on screen, but also the shadows of artists who loved, sacrificed, and departed in silence. If Family Affair ever made you smile, please share the character you remember the most. Like and subscribe to explore more true stories, where the Hollywood light shines not just on the face, but also into the hearts of the people who lived fully for their art.